All right. Looks like everything is connected and we are live or should be live. If not, YouTube is lying to me and I can't do anything about that. So, if you are watching this, hello and welcome to the Written in Melanin channel, wherever this day may have found you. I'm so glad that you are here. And today, you guys, I am here with the one, the only Miss Shanna Miles, and she is the author of For All Time. And if you have not read it, you should 100% pick up this book because it is a one of a kind. Let me tell you, one of a kind. And in case you have not picked it up yet, just so you know, it is a fated lovers. You know what? I am gonna try to tell you. I am gonna try to tell you because the author is right here. So, Miss Shauna Miles, if you would tell anyone who is unfortunate and has not picked up your book what it is about.
All right, so Tamar and Fayard are teenagers and they are in love. They are in love in 1920s Philadelphia. They are in love in 14th century Gao, which is right outside of Mali. They are in love during today in Columbia, South Carolina, and they are also in love in 24th century on a space colony. But just because you are in love doesn't mean that you get to have each other. So you'll follow Tamar and Fayard as they try to break the cycle of their meeting, mating, and falling apart.
Whew. It's good, you guys. Like, I was reading it and I was just like, okay, okay. So first of all, let me say this. I absolutely love your writing style and I loved Faye art. I called Faye was my absolute favorite throughout the book. I was like, why is this man so cute and smooth and just so charming? What? He just knows what to say when to say it, don't he?
I wanted him to be kind of a flirt, like like the charmer,
You nailed it. You nailed it. So, what inspired you to write this story? Like, where did this come from?
Well, I have this is my first traditionally published novel, but it's not the first novel that I've ever written.
Mm,
So, I've written a couple of books before, and right before I wrote this one, I had been reading a lot of historical romance,
mm,
and I wanted to write one myself. So I did. I wrote one, and it was, something that I really liked. But, you know, not everything you write is going to be right for the time. So, and it was set in 1850s, which is like right before the Civil War. And that's just not something that's just kind of like jiving right now. People are not really, desperate for Civil War stories. So, I decided that I was going to try and play with some different eras. And I wrote a couple of, kind of short story type treatments, set in different times. So I had a couple where they were in a 1970s San Francisco,
oh, I would
like a
have loved to
flower
see that.
child and a panther. I wrote a treatment where there
Wait,
were
hold on.
like
Hold on. I need to know who was the flower child?
Faye's the flower child
Okay.
and Tamar is the panther.
Okay.
Because because I wanted that, that I thought of like Jimi Hendrix.
Hmm.
Like Jimi Hendrix is a flower child. He is, kind of like everybody love everybody else. I'm just, gonna drop out and drop acid and be into my music and, just vibe. And I was
Right.
thinking of that, like picked out hair and, feather boas and leather vest with fringe, you
Oh,
know.
I can see it. I can see it so clearly in my mind just off of who Faye is in every lifetime that you wrote him in. Like, I can see him being that and Tamar just being like the strict, I've got an agenda, I'm pushing for
Yes.
change. And Faye
Mhm.
being like, you stressed out, bro. You need to calm
Yeah,
down.
and he's a lover. So I was thinking of that. I was also thinking of like a 90s in Brooklyn on the subway, where Tamar, or at that time it was just like a female character who is a violinist who wants, desperately to go to Juilliard. And then there is a male character who is hustling CDs, of hip hop on, busking, on the subway, and having them meet and have these different experiences. And as I'm writing these different treatments in these different times and these different eras, because one thing about historical romance, there's tons of historical romance, but
Mm-hmm.
most of it is featuring, like white characters. And you don't really get to see black characters time travel because everybody thinks that our history is just so bleak.
Yeah.
But we have survived so much, and we've survived and thrived in those times. So everything doesn't have to be centering our oppression or centering white folks and our reaction to those white folks. We can have a narrative that's set in 1890s that doesn't center around whether or not something
Mm-hmm.
is going on with our discrimination. you know for example, I was talking to my grandmother, and she was like, I didn't even see any white people until I was in high school.
And I think that's something that I'm glad that you brought up because our history is so rich. And before integration, it was just like interacting with them wasn't a thing. Like it
Mm-mm.
was completely separate. And I love that you touched on so many different points in history. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna pretend I don't know nothing about ancient Africa. Okay, that's not my my forte. But I did really enjoy reading that version of their timeline because it was just like, okay, I don't know anything about this, but the love story that they have, it's just like it's strong enough and it's just fun. It was fun reading them interact in
Mm-hmm.
different places and different times with different social norms. Like, when she is in it's 1325, I want to
I
say
think so. I
13.
have to look it up. I have to look here. I have to see exactly where I dropped them,
Okay.
at the time, because it's like they're in 1924 in Philadelphia. It's 1325. Yes.
1325. Oh, I got
Hmm.
it. Look at me remembering numbers. Okay. um 1325. And I just thought it was so cute how she was like, even the little boy, she was like, I need an escort. I'm not supposed to be, well, she wasn't thinking that, but it's just like she
Hmm.
wasn't really supposed to be walking around by herself unchaperoned. Like that was a
Hmm.
thing that just did not happen.
Hmm.
And she was like, look, I got to go about my business. I don't have time. But at the
Hmm.
same time, it's just like she is breaking social norms and even meeting up with him. It's just
Hmm.
like, you ain't supposed to be doing that, Holmes. And
Yeah.
I just thought that was so perfect.
Yeah.
Like they're willing to bend the rules, break the rules for each other. And it kind of happens in each of their timelines. And I'm just like, thank you. That was so well written.
I liked when I was writing the different treatments, and I started to like, I was like, what if we had, I just kept using the same person. So kind of like they ended up being strung together, and I had to figure out a way, okay, I can make this work as just like one complete narrative and have like fun with that. And when I started, like in it, I like research. If you don't know, I am a school librarian. That's my day job,
That's actually a
so
question that you have from the audience. So,
yes, I am a school librarian, and I love the research part of it.
mhm,
And you get to dig deep into these different eras because, as Americans, I know you're from North Carolina, I'm from
yeah,
South Carolina, and our, education doesn't really cover Africa at all except for Egypt.
yeah,
But the people who were enslaved were not from Egypt. So you don't, like there's just this big gaping black hole of what life was like or what, existed in that space before we became enslaved. So it was kind of fun for me to say, okay, well, where are we coming from? What was life like? How do people interact in different eras? And like we exist everywhere. So you can pick
that part.
anywhere. Like the diaspora is vast, and it's not just enslavement that, um scattered us to, all over the world. Like, you could write several books that are just about the Moors, going into Italy,
Mhm.
like, what is that like? And it's so fun to just kind of pick apart those, what's there.
I believe it. I'm not a huge fan of research. That's just like a personal thing, but I but I love reading books like yours where it's just like it is very clearly you're not making this up. Like the people, some of the people like Mansa Musa, I believe
Mm-hmm.
is how you say.
Mansa Musa. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that is a real person who existed, the richest
Mm-hmm.
man who ever lived, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's like I know that, and it's just like
But
reading
that's an
it.
easy touch point because people know the name. So now it's like, okay, well, what time, what year is that?
Hmm.
Where would they be?
And what does that
And
look
like,
like when he showed up in places,
yeah,
and how does that
like
affect the
when he showed
economy?
up in places, like part of, the tradition of when you go to Mecca is to, like, to give gifts.
Hmm.
So he gave away so much gold in certain places that it collapsed their economy. You know, that,
Wow.
things just got real. So, like, you have to think about, like, what are these, and it's so, he's going across Africa, so you go to all those different, like, cities and places, and what it's like to travel with him, all kind of stuff, cool stuff.
That sounds amazing. Still not into research, but if you were to research and write another book about it, I would read
Okay,
it.
all right, noted.
Yeah. And just so you know, I'm gonna shout out Miss Woman of Color Reader is in the chat. Hello, how you doing? She did ask the question of how being a librarian affected your writing, but I feel like you just answered that. JC Henry is also here. Benjamin is here. Benjamin's my husband. He's great. Hi, Ben. And Read Love Listen is here. And she said, greetings. I'm currently listening to the audio and loving it. I love all the time periods they travel to. I need more Black time travel stories. And it can be just us. And she said the 1325 is her favorite timeline and the future one. So that
Hmm.
actually brings me to my next question for you, which
Okay.
is what was your favorite timeline to write?
My favorite timeline, the easiest timeline to write was the 24th century,
Okay.
because I can just make up everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't really is, it's just pure imagination. There's no fact checking, there's no looking it up and seeing exactly, now where would they be, or
Yeah,
would they really play that song?
I got
None of
you.
that stuff. So the 21st century is the easiest one to do. The most fun is 1920s for me, because
Okay.
I like, at first, that's the first era that I really got deeply into writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that I would be able to make it so that every era would end up on a train,
Mm-hmm.
so, like, so they're on a train in 1920s, and eventually in the present day we end up on a train as well. We end up on
Mm-hmm.
Amtrak.
Yeah.
But I wanted there to be, like, a train theme. I couldn't really make the theme work, but I like them being in the enclosed space, because that's a romance trope too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know you're snowed in, or some kind of entrapment. You're just locked in together, and because of that close proximity, you get these deep conversations, and then these emotions come out, and other stuff happens too.
I love how you add that. Like other stuff happens too. But I will say that the 1920s one where they're on the train is also my favorite. Um, ain't gonna lie, I wanted to throw hands with her dad because he was really like you about to get a cello upside the head in your sleep, okay? But I liked how I kind of like how the entire thing played out, and I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it, but that was definitely my favorite timeline. And it's just kind of like I don't know, you have this way of writing where it's just like I said, in every Lifetime Fayard is so sweet, and he's just trying his best, and he's a hustler. And I knew I was gonna like this timeline when in the beginning, Homeboy is jumping out a window. Like, oh, okay, this sounds like a good idea. Let's roll with this.
But that was on purpose too. I wanted to kind of, like, have a scenario, in Romeo and Juliet. At first, Romeo, when we first meet Romeo, he's all into Rosaline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like my dear Rosaline, he's all about that. And his friends are like, oh, Rosaline. And then, and then it becomes all about Juliet. And I kind of wanted to show that he is making a conscious choice to be all into her. Like he
Mm-hmm.
has had, this is not just like, oh,
He's not inexperienced, we'll say.
he's not inexperienced. This is a I'm into her because I like her and I'm going to be into her.
Mm-hmm.
This is my choice.
I love that. I personally am a fan of stories where people, whether it's the male or the female lead, where they're just like, I'm going to like you on purpose. It's not
Yes.
like we just stumbled into this or we just fell into this. It's like, no, I wasn't expecting to meet you, but now that I have met you, I'm making a choice that I want to be about you. And I
Hmm.
love stories like that because I feel like I was actually just talking about this with one of my friends. I feel like sometimes in romance we get such toxic relationships, and that is the standard. And it's
Hmm.
just like, no, someone choosing you and being like, yo, I'm going to pitch you first. Like, I like you
Hmm.
because I like you. And it's like, yes, this person over here is pretty. And you kind of touch on that in the present timeline that they're in, where she's like, oh, you have so many choices and these other girls like you. He's like, okay, but I like you. And I love that he's not trying to deny it. Like, nah, she's not into me. Like, yeah, she's into me. I know it. It's fine. She gonna be thirsty over there.
Like but this is me and you
Yeah,
and I.
we here.
We're here. We're gonna make this work and happen.
So, that being said, because there are so many different timelines and different social eras and such, how did you decide which, I guess I'll say, which romantic tropes were going to be in each era? Because, like you said, the 1920s is really close proximity,
Hmm.
whereas, the 1325 timeline is much more romancing, like a traditional, I'm romancing you over time, whereas the
Hmm.
present timeline is basically just dating as we currently know it. So, how did you
Hmm.
decide which obstacles were going to be the breaking point? Because that's not a spoiler. Like, the whole book is literally about them trying to break a cycle because
Hmm.
each lifetime ends badly. So, that's not a spoiler. But how did you choose which obstacle was going to be the obstacle that was going to break them in each timeline?
I think that those came up organically. It wasn't like I plotted them out that way. It's just as I started to write and knew that they needed to, come to a conclusion,
Mm-hmm.
they kind of presented themselves because each era has their own social norms and the way that men and women relate and girls and boys relate,
Mm-hmm.
that they those how this would happen kind of like presented themselves. For me it felt organic because like you were saying, in the 14th century there are just certain ways that men and women relate and can't, like, or just
Mm-hmm.
can't, interact because of, you have to get permission to see a certain person.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just run away together, like there are all these obstacles that are involved with that. In the 1920s, she's got the obstacle of her father. So how would she get past her father? Why would, like, what options are available to her?
She could have
um
pushed them off the train. That was an
yeah.
option.
And I wanted also to have them both make bad choices.
Mm.
Like, and there have to be consequences to those bad choices. And that's
Mm-hmm.
part of, them having to go back and forth. A part of the cycle talk is like each person is going to make the wrong choice in a certain timeline.
I
So,
got you.
mhm.
I, but I like it though. Like I said, I was reading it and I was into it. I was just like, in the first their first, like, I don't know if it was their first one, but in the
Mhm.
1300s, and homegirl was like, Ian, yo, Ian was okay, okay, not cool, but she was okay until
Mhm.
the end, and I was like, bruh. But then again, it was just like, you can't be mad at Ian for making the decision that she did, because
Yeah.
she's like, I gotta look out for me.
Mhm.
Like, I don't want you to be necessarily unhappy, but I've been on this journey for a long time, and I finally got to take her. I'm not finna give it up just because you in love.
Yeah.
Forget that.
I wanted the people to feel, I don't like books or situations where people make a decision that doesn't make sense. I
Mhm.
wanted all the decisions that the people were making to make sense, but also still be the wrong decision to make. Like it's
Absolutely.
logical to do this, but it's like you need to, make another choice. But again, we're dealing with teenagers, and you
It ain't
know
all there. It's not all there when you a
all the
teenager.
stuff that you're going, like, and that's part of the drama too. Is like if everybody makes the good decision, then we'd have no story.
That's true. That's true. But taking us back to the chat. My mom is here. Hey, mom, how you doing? And you have the question of, since your book follows so many different timelines, did you ever consider making your book a series and doing one or two timelines per book?
I get it originally started that way,
Mm-hmm.
and then I decided no, to kind of put them together because I don't know if you would want to, I guess I could have, but I didn't have, I guess, the stamina to
That's
pull
real.
it all out for 250 pages that are in this particular era. And then I was thinking about like sales, about because it is a fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to have the fantasy element. If it was broken up into the different eras, then it's more so just a historical
Romance.
romance. So I would end up with like three historical romances, one contemporary romance with the same,
Mm-hmm.
group of people, which, isn't as compelling as it all
Being
being
together.
together. Hmm.
So, with that being said, like, what made you decide to break up the timeline so that you're getting different, the same, I would say the same parts of their love story at the same time versus having a linear timeline where it's like you get their first life and then so on and so forth?
That was my editor. Because when I sold it, it was linear.
Okay.
With some, small little changes for plot,
Mm-hmm.
which if you've read the book, you probably kind of understand where the breaks would have been,
Yeah.
for plot. But otherwise, it was linear. And I won't say linear. I will say that all the stories were contained.
Gotcha.
So, like, once you started in Philadelphia, you didn't come out of Philadelphia until that particular story arc was done. And
Mm-hmm.
then you went to a different era and, and lived that out with them. But the way it's done now, it's the beginning of their, so quote unquote, like a meet cute.
Mm-hmm.
All of those are in the first act, and
Mm-hmm.
then the second act is in the middle of their story, all lined up together, and then which took a bit of construction.
I'll say
And
that.
because as a writer, it's easy to go from linear stuff like this happens and you just kind of move on, and I know where the action breaks are and how to
Mm-hmm.
make the chapters work, and it's just a little bit harder when you're trying to like sandwich in stuff, so.
Absolutely. So, since you brought up your editor, that kind of switches us over to the other part of this discussion. And for those of you who are watching, just so you know, the first part of this was a spoiler free discussion. We're going to talk about the, I guess, more technical side of writing. So, just keep that in mind. Please don't leave the stream, okay? If you do have to leave, please like it first. Like the channel, like the video, subscribe to the channel, okay? But you should stay because we're going to talk about, like I said, publishing and so on and so forth. And if you guys have questions, please continue dropping them in the chat. Um, but that being said, you decided to go traditional publishing, which means you had an editor and you had a
Mhm.
team of people helping you to bring this book to life.
Mhm.
So, what was that whole situation like? Like, how did you go from, okay, I have an idea, to, okay, now this book is out in the world? Like,
Okay, so this is my sixth book
okay.
that I have written. And if you are like brand new, you have nothing about how to get in traditional publishing, there is a process. So here's like the kind of short version of what you would
Mm-hmm.
have to do. So you've got your book and you've written it and you want to see it on the shelves at Barnes and Noble. So how do you make that happen? So Barnes and Noble doesn't really work with individuals who put their books out and get them printed by whomever.
Mm-hmm.
They work with publishers like Simon and Schuster, Penguin Random House, those types of people.
Mm-hmm.
Penguin and Simon and Schuster have people called editors who acquire manuscripts. Though you cannot just email an editor and say, I have a book that you might want to acquire, only an agent can contact them and say, here's some books that are available for you to acquire.
Mm-hmm.
So you, as the author with a finished, polished book, will need to email an agent,
Mm-hmm.
and that email is called a query. Once you send that out, they may then ask you to send them maybe like 3 chapters.
Mm-hmm.
They'll That may take a month or 2 or 3 for them to read and decide if they want to see your full manuscript, where you send them the entire thing. And then from there, it may take 6 months for them to get back to you and say, hey, I really like this, I want to bring you on. Or they may say, thank you for sending me your manuscript, it's not for me. And that's just to get your agent.
Mm-hmm.
Then after you sign with your agent, you're going to then have to your agent is going to help you polish up your manuscript to be then sent out on sub to editors at Penguin Random House and whatever. Then they will see it and send an offer to your agent, and you can chat with them to see if you want to work with them, and you'll then polish it up after you sign with that particular editor and they pay you.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I had been doing like that query, they call it the query trenches, for the 5 other books,
Mm-hmm.
and got some feedback, but not anything that was definitive. What really made the difference for me was this Twitter contest called DV Pit.
Right.
So DV Pit is like it's I think it's twice a year,
I think so.
maybe.
Um, I think it's like in the spring and then again in the fall.
Yeah. So what you do is you put a pitch in as many characters for your book and say, my book is this girl meets that guy in a volcano pit and they fall in love, right?
Not a volcano pit.
And all of these agents are looking for pitches that day,
Mm-hmm.
and you can get like 60 agents looking for your stuff and telling you to go ahead and query me today.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, and I did get like 50 agents who were like, send me your stuff
Mm-hmm.
today. And after I sent off my stuff, maybe like 2 weeks after that, I got 9 agents who were like, I want to represent you
Hey.
and this particular book. I went with John Cusick at Folio Literary.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe 2 months after that, I had signed a contract with Simon and Schuster and Krista Vitola.
Okay.
It was very,
So
very, very, very quick.
So, how did you decide which agent to go with? Because I know that's another thing that some people, I guess, I don't want to say some people, that isn't talked about a whole lot. So, if you do have multiple
Mhm.
agents who want to represent you, I know everybody probably has a different criteria for breaking it
Mhm.
down, but what made you decide to choose the agent that you went with over the other 8 who were interested?
Well, I was lucky in that I had multiple agents so that I could compare and contrast. I think
Mm.
it's harder to make a decision when you just have the one person and you're like, is this my chance?
Mm-hmm.
If I don't go with this person, am I going to lose my chance?
Right.
So I had multiple people, and I wanted someone who had established contacts with not just big 5 publishers, but had also worked with people who then sold movie rights.
Mm.
So there were maybe 2 or 3 who
Mm-hmm.
had done that. And I wanted to make sure that I wouldn't be the tiniest fish on their roster either. So I didn't want someone who had maybe 60 clients.
Yeah.
So it had to be somebody who had a decent number of clients and who had sold movie rights or or the agency had a department that dealt with movie rights. And after that, narrowing it down to that, I then emailed um, people that they had recommended that would vouch for them. So other people who would tell you, like, what's it like working with John? What's it like working with Matt?
Mm-hmm.
And I emailed them and they got back to me, and I talked to, some other people, and they were able to tell me, you know, what kind of relationship they had, how much feedback they give,
Mm-hmm.
because that matters. Are they, responsive? Like if I email them, are they going to get back with me in a day or 3 days? That
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing.
Gotcha. So it all comes into play. So I'm thank you for talking about it because, like I said, it seems like a lot of people don't want to talk about the actual process of
Mhm.
what happens beyond, like you said, the trenches where you're querying people. It feels like you get on the other side of the trench and it's like radio silence. So but that being said, I do have a couple of other questions for you, specifically touching a little bit on diversity in publishing because I'm not gonna beat around the bush. Like
Mhm.
we've if you've been on the channel, you know that we talk about this, and it has been very much brought to the light, especially since last year,
Mhm.
of what the traditional publishing industry is like. So they are definitely trying to do better, and I
Mhm.
can see the pushes to like do better now that it has been brought to the light, as they say.
Mhm.
But obviously, attempts do not always equate to actual success.
Mhm.
So, from your perspective as a black woman navigating a industry that is traditionally very white and very male, do you have any words of advice for anyone who wants to also pursue that route?
I say go for it, and I think it's hard for everyone. And those of us, I think, who persevere are those of us who just stuck around, just kept doing it, as long as we've been doing it. Like there, I have a critique partner, and both of us, we met doing Pitch Mad like 7 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and neither of us got an agent, but and both of us have written multiple novels in between then and now.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to do, it's not uncommon, like when I was pitching 50 or more agents every time I wrote a novel.
Mm-hmm.
I was making changes, all that stuff, going to conferences, all of that stuff. And you don't really understand it, but you are getting better.
Mm-hmm.
And I also will say, if you feel like you just want to get your stuff out there, do
Mm-hmm.
that too. Because I self published as
Okay.
well. And I put something out there and realized I don't want to self publish.
It's hard.
It is hard. And I know people who do it and do it well, but it is a trial. You got to really be a hustler.
Yeah.
Like you have to have the personality for it. Um, you know, and there are just things that self-publishing offers you that traditional publishing doesn't, which is like you get a lot more control in self-publishing. So if you're one of those people who's like, this is the book of my heart, and if they change one word, I'll throw a fit, then traditional publishing is not for you.
Mm-hmm.
You get a say in the cover, you get a say in the title, but that doesn't mean that that comes down to you're going to say absolutely not, and that, what I mean, like it doesn't work like that. You're working with a team
Yeah.
who's trying to market things, so I feel like, and here's the thing too, is like my agent is white and
Mm-hmm.
male. My agent also fights for my money,
Hey, that's important.
so you have to make a decision on like the heart of people and not just, like the surface.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who are established who are going to fight for you, or maybe willing to fight for you. And that's what you need, is like somebody who's willing to, or knowledgeable enough to say, this is a low ball. We're not going to take that. You will have to look out, I guess, for people who think that diversity is a trend,
Mm.
and you don't want to be somebody's just like throwaway, you know, black book on the roster just to say that they've got it. But you have to also be strategic and say, okay, am I going to use this as my way to get in and make myself a career?
Yeah.
And I think all of us who are on the shelves right now and, are new. And you can tell that. And I've noticed this, just like a couple of days ago, I went to look at the bookstore by the number of diverse paperbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Because a paperback is after the hardcover, big marketing push, is usually someone's, back catalog. They've already, this is their, you get a paperback once you start, you're on book 2 and book 3,
Mm-hmm.
in your catalog, what you've been writing. And they are sparse for
Mm-hmm.
diverse authors. They're, like you can get all kind of fantasy hardcovers right now, but if you're trying to, go pick something up for $13, you're not going to have as many options. We're all just here establishing, the marketplace. It used to be a big thing that they said that our books would not sell to
Mm-hmm.
white kids, which they, termed the mainstream. This, now all of these, people who are out here are proving them wrong. There's an appetite or a normalcy that has been established, that we want stories about kids, and we will read stories about queer kids, we will read stories about black kids, we will read stories about Asian kids set in San Francisco
Mm-hmm.
in 1899. We'll read those stories. And because that is being really solidified, I feel like the publishing machine, which
Mm-hmm.
is amoral, you
Hey,
know, it's a machine about
this.
money. Okay, so some of it, before was about what people thought, their
Mm-hmm.
racist thoughts and their racist ideas about the market, and they just had to imagine the market. But the market is now like solid in black and white, in like pennies and dollars.
Yep.
So you don't no longer have to go on people's thoughts, and those people who still have those racist thoughts that cost the company money
Mm-hmm.
aren't going to be there very long.
Yeah. And that's the part that we have to get to, where it's just like the people who are saying these things, like books with a black girl on the cover aren't going to sell, or a book with two black leads aren't going to sell. Because that's something else that I really enjoyed about your book, is that I complain about this all the time on the channel. It's just that I was like, outside of Christina Forrest, before I picked up your book, I was like, I don't get to see a lot of YA romance with
Mhm,
a black girl who also falls in love with a black main character. And I
mhm.
was just like, I'm not dissing interracial couples, romance, love, or anything
No.
like that, but also I'm just kind of like, that is not everyone's lived experience. And sometimes it just feels overwhelming, where it's just like, okay, of course he is not black because she's black, or if he's black, she's not.
Mhm.
And it was just that. I'll say this: I am a big advocate of the fact that you need diversity in books, because everybody should be able to pick up a book and see their lived experience on the page, even if it is
Mhm.
tweaked for fantasy or romance or whatever. It's not, their life word for word, but it's just like I can see my experience on the page. And it's just kind of like, my lived experience is like, I am married to a black man. I have always only liked black men. That is just a personal thing for me, but sometimes reading YA is just like, you have to suspend that
Mhm.
belief for a while so you can get into the book. And I just really love that. And it's like, not only did you include that, but it's on the cover. There's no question
Mhm.
about it.
That
And
that's what this is. It's but like, but I that's why I wrote it like that, because I think that was also one of those prevailing, ideas that are being pushed to the wayside. And I hope my book and a couple of other books, are, going to be pushing that narrative as well. Is that it used to be a thought that you had to have like a white stand-in. You
mm-hmm.
had to have some way for the mainstream reader to relate. And I feel like they didn't give kids, and they didn't give white kids in particular, the benefit of the doubt that they relate to kids. They
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily have to have,
The same skin
a
color.
white kid there for them to relate to it. Just like black kids have been reading white kids, forever. You know what I mean? Like,
The
you don't have to
expectation is
do that.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. I get a little hype about it. So I was like, I agree with you 100%. It just sometimes it boggles me that it's like it's expected that, non-white kids are just supposed to suspend disbelief and relate to the book,
Hmm.
but white kids are incapable of it. And I'm just
Hmm.
kind of like, that's not true, because like I said, your book is amazing. It is incredibly well written. And like I said, I loved Fayard and Tamar together. So it's just kind of like, if you can't pick up a book and enjoy it for that aspect of it, it's just like, maybe you should think about some of your more critical aspects of
Hmm.
your own brain versus saying that this is wrong. But that is a whole different conversation. Like I told you before we started this, I will run my mouth to anybody who will listen. So I'm gonna stay on topic. um, but I'm going to try to keep us on topic because, like I said, we are coming up on that 45-minute mark.
Okay.
But I will say this in the comments. Read Love Listen said that when you did your breakdown of how the industry works, that was a great breakdown, and she thanked you for it. She wants to be traditionally published and self-published, and it's good to see that DV Pitt was beneficial for you. And I'm really glad that more authors are saying how they got their agents and how they got into the industry, because I've been noticing that more, not just with you, but like in the acknowledgments and stuff things of books, a lot more authors are saying like, I did this thing, or I did this, or I did Pitt Mad, or DV Pitt, or whichever one it is.
Hmm.
It's a very, how do I say, relatable way of being like, yeah, I was out here throwing Twitter pitches with the rest of y'all.
Hmm.
It's not some mystical, magical world in the clouds where it's just like it's unreachable. So,
You have, and if we don't pull off the veil of how it's done, then we won't see more of us there. Because there used to be like, oh well, we never got any stories, from black writers. There we just never, they're not coming across our desk.
mm-hmm.
Well, here's how it happens. And I also don't want people, like I see some people who are self-publishing because they don't know, well, what do you do, how does it work, how long is it really supposed to take, how do you craft this query letter. Like, that information is out there, but you have to kind of like shout it and say, this is the process.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you are being open and honest about it, because it helps so much to know that A, it's an achievable process, and B, it's a time consuming process, but it can be done.
Mhm.
And if you don't hear back from someone for 2 weeks, that's not because they don't like your story. It's because they just probably got a whole lot going on, and
If
they'll
you don't hear,
respond to you.
that's normal though. They also, like, the time it takes, 2 months is normal. Like, I keep a spreadsheet. Like, I used
Mhm.
to. I had a spreadsheet, um, and I think it's on my website and my blog somewhere. That if you're querying, especially I know I have one for DV Pit, where it's like, here are the name. You put in all of the email addresses.
Mhm.
What day did you email them? When did they email you back? Did you get a rejection? And that's the only way that you're going to be able to keep like track of it, because it takes months and months for like the back and forth.
And knowing that, it's just like, I feel like that would give people who are querying confidence. Like, I don't need to shoot myself down just because they didn't get back to me. Like, I know you want an answer in like a day, like you want to answer
Hmm.
back tomorrow. But if they don't get back for you for 2 months, it's not necessarily they're trying to find a nice way to say no.
Yeah.
Because what I like to think, I don't know, I've never queried, but if it's anything like colleges, it's like colleges don't find nice ways to say no. They just send you a itty little bitty piece of paper and a little itty bitty envelope.
There are form rejections that could come back, which I also like to want to tell people too, is like, you need to be querying like dozens of people,
In bulk.
not just one person, like eggs in one basket. That person may never get back to you, or they may have their assistant get back to you a year from then,
Mm-hmm.
as they're clearing out their inbox of stuff.
I mean, that's how it is. You know, some I agree. I'm not traditionally published. I'm not in the query trenches. I just like to give this information. So if anybody
Hmm.
watching this now or in the future wants to go this route, y'all have that information at your
Hmm.
disposal. Y'all know me, I'm indie all day, every day. So if that changes, I'll let you know. But for the time being, and in the comments, Read Love Listen said that the two black characters on your cover is what made her pick it up. She didn't have to guess, which is amazing, which means your marketing is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. So that's good. And just Eva is here. Hey Eva, how you doing? And she said, as a white gal, I agree completely. I really love hearing agent stories. It's like watching folks get picked for a singing show. That moment of acceptance into the publishing world is so exciting. Throws confetti.
It is.
So I love it. I love to see people succeed. Like I always say this, like I'm rooting for everybody black. Like whatever you want to do, however you want to get your book out there, I am praying that it works for you and it is successful and it's good. And I will say this, I hope all of your books get published because like I said, I enjoyed For All Time.
I'm
Like
so
for
glad.
real. Absolutely. So we are coming up on 46 minutes in, you guys. We're going to do a quick spoiler talk, and then that is going to be it for this stream. So, in case you're going to dip out because you have not read the book and you don't want to hear spoilers, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Please like this stream. Please like this video. Subscribe to the channel. Also, all the links to my socials as well as Shanna's socials are down in the description box below. So make sure you check her out. Make sure you check me out because I'm on the internet too, you guys. And if you have not picked up a copy of For All Time, there is a link so you can grab it from the Melanin Library. If you don't know what the Melanin Library is, it is a database of books by black authors. All the books on there are black, so for sure check it out. Use it as a resource. Share it with some friends. If you're going to buy the book, please buy it from the Melanin Library because affiliate links are real, you guys. It keeps me going, okay? All right? It helps me buy tea so that I can keep doing these streams for you guys. All right? But yeah, that's that. That being said, this is your spoiler warning. If you have not read the book and you don't want spoilers, this would be a great time to click off the video. If you're watching this in the future, still, spoiler warning. Click off the video if you don't want to know. All right? Great. So, that being said, um, just Eva said that she hasn't read the book and it's in her cart. So thanks for the chats and the spoilers heads up. So no problem. You know I got you. I want you to enjoy the book like I did. So, um, and also slight deviation. Benjamin, if you're watching this, if you could get rid of the comment from Samantha Bates, that would be appreciated because it's just a bot. All right. That being said, spoiler talk. These are just my personal questions. If y'all have read the book and y'all want to know, y'all need to drop these questions in here because I got a whole list. Okay, you need to get on the list at the beginning. That being said, can we talk about the ending of the book?
Okay. Yeah.
I have
Yes, we can.
multiple questions, but I will say this. This is my most pressing question. The ending of the book. You mentioned this in the beginning that you do not always get the person that you love. So my question is, why did you feel like it was important for Tamar and Fayard to basically break up at the end of the book?
Um, because they are 18
Mhm.
and there is here's the thing, because I met my husband my freshman year of high school, my
Mhm.
freshman year of no, college, excuse me.
Mhm.
And we've been married 15 years. So, like falling in love with someone at 18 and having it work out is fantastic. But I wanted, the feminist in me came out and wanted her to have a life that where she made her own choices
Mhm.
before she, went all in with him, because I didn't want it to be the kind of Disney romance where you just fall in love with a guy and he is your starry eye and that's what you're doing from here on out. I wanted them separately to have full experiences and then come back together and know for sure that they are true and solid soulmates.
Okay. because I had to ask, because like you, I met my husband my senior year of high school. So, and we've been together, it'll be 7 years in February. We have been married 7 years in February. So I ain't gonna lie, I got to the end, I was like, hey, hold up, pause. What's happening? What's happening? So I understand now where you're coming from, because when I read it, I was like, I don't want to say I assumed, but I kind of guessed that that's where it was coming from, because when I got married, that was the advice that I got a lot when we decided, because we got married young. We got married when I got engaged at 19, got married at 20. So I was still in college. I was in my senior year of college, and a lot of people were like, hey, you know what you're doing? Are you sure you know what you're doing? Because I don't think you know what you're doing. And so when it got to the end, I was just like, no, Tamar, no. But I understood where you were coming from too. So,
and they do, and they come back together because they are supposed to be together.
Yes.
You know, like they are supposed to be together, but they both had some growing to do. And some of the problems that they were having, the bad decisions they were making, were because they hadn't grown up enough. They, you know, and it comes also from my own personal experience too. Like my husband and I, you know, met and were really into each other freshman year of college, and then there was a time where we didn't really talk, and there was some growing that need to be done, some understandings that need to be made. Like if we had decided to just stay together at 19 and stick it out, I don't know if it would have worked out, because there needed to be some growth that needed to happen and then come together. So that was my idea.
Gotcha. And like I said, I respect it. I was reading, and then I got to the diner set. I was like, what you mean? So, but speaking of the diner scene, this question is more just like clarity to make sure that I understood. So, so Fayard's there, and then he goes outside with the Crayola men, and then he's shot, but then he's walking back into the diner.
Yes.
Is that a time loop?
It's a time loop.
Okay. That's what I thought it was, and I wanted to make sure, because I was like, hold up, pause.
It's a time loop. It's a time loop, you know, like, and we're meant to understand that, you know, how they're living these lives over and over again, but this is their final chance to get it right, and they have only so much time to do it, and it's cycling them back into the same spot, into the same life, until they start to make the right decisions. You know, until they understand it's like the diner is this like cosmic whole, you know, point in time and place that allows them to finally, you know, do what they need to do to break the cycle.
Got you. Because I ain't gonna lie, I had to read it a couple times. So I was like, did homegirl just sit here and eat 50 slices of pie? No.
That's the loop.
That's a loop. Okay.
You know, sometimes that's why you see that, like, sometimes he's eating the pie, sometimes he's drinking a tea, and then he's look, you know, like, am I doing this? It's like constant deja vu. Have I done this before? Yes, you've done this several times before, and y'all are not making the right decision. So, talk it out and make the right decision.
So what was your I guess what was your mindset behind adding Patience and Joseph from the 1920s, her sister and her father from the 1920s, as the owner and waitress at the diner?
I wanted to introduce the idea that they weren't the only people who
were stuck in time,
reincarnated for different reasons.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay. Not even gonna lie, that does add more weight to the book in my mind now, because I'm like, oh, it's not just them. That's amazing. Okay. Okay. Hold on, I gotta read the question. Hold on. Okay. So there's a point in the story where, you know, their future selves get this like time egg, essentially, and then they go back to their, I'll say, present day selves. So what made you decide to have them do that? And then like there's also, that's the point of the story where they tackle the time loop, right? And then they go on, and then we have a time skip. So what made you decide to do that? And then also, do they ever get the memories from their previous life? Because you had kind of hinted before that even in like their earlier lifetimes, like the 1920s, they were on the train, and she was getting memories from I'm assuming
her
that,
past lives.
right.
Yeah. So, we're meant what I was thinking of, that there was a finite number of lives that they would live, but there are only certain places within the timeline that would allow them to make the decision that would break the cycle. So
Mm,
when they are in that 24th century, like they're still doing the same, the same loop, making the same wrong decisions, but once they get that device, so once they get the egg, they have the opportunity to then make a change. And the aliens on that planet, are like, they use the egg as well, but for different reasons. It
mm,
allows them to, to escape different era, different points in time.
mm-hmm.
um and they have a whole mythology around it. And
I thought that was
Tamar
awesome,
and
by the way.
Fayard are allowed to tap into that, and able, in order to change their lives. If they never encountered that egg, they may, infinity just keep
Mm-hmm.
on going, doing the same thing, or possibly moving in out of out of different kinds of timelines as other people make changes. you
Mm-hmm.
know think of the multiverse, which is
I,
fun too, because I like science fiction. So like
yeah.
it's fantasy, it's science fiction. And there was some talk too as to whether it's going to be like straight fantasy, or make it like super science fiction, where it's like, and you could think of it both ways, like,
I
thinking
think,
of, like a microwave is magic to somebody in colonial era.
yeah, it depends on how you look at it, but I think it
Mhm.
goes really well hand in hand, because it just works. It
Mhm.
works. Um, I have other questions for you, but also gonna say hello to Ashley G. She's here, and she said that she loves time loops. Hey Ashley, and African Violet is also here. Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the stream. And she said, I have your book from the library out right now.
Yay.
So I hope you enjoy it, but I do want to warn you, African Violet, that if you're watching this in real time, we are in the middle of spoiler talk. So I don't want to
Mhm.
spoil you on the end of the book. Just so you know, I want you to have fair warning. There you go. But I have two more major questions. If you guys have anything that you would like to ask Shauna before we end this interview, for sure, drop those in the chat. I will ask them for you. So, three questions, because I forgot to ask it earlier. I don't know how I forgot to ask it. I ask this question every time, but whatever. Two more spoiler talk questions, and then one more just regular question.
Okay.
Um, First one is, were there any lifetimes that you purposely left out? I think you kind of touched on this earlier, but any that
I
you.
wrote a really long piece that was in 1980s Atlanta during the Atlanta child murders.
Ah,
And it just didn't work for length.
gotcha.
So it got cut.
Okay. And I will ask this just because I just want to know. Do Tamar and Fayard finally get to live happily ever after the epilogue when they see each other again?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's what I needed to know. I needed that in my spirit.
Yes. They do. They live together a long, long life with children, and the whole bit.
I love it. Okay. Okay. And last question, unless anybody has one from the chat. Um, if you could give a younger version of yourself any piece of advice, what would it be and what age would you give it to yourself?
Any piece of advice? Um, I guess I would be to me in early college, and I would just tell her that, eventually everything's going to be okay. I don't really have any regrets in my life. And of course, I've made mistakes, but I think they've all kind of led me here. And
Mm-hmm.
I like here. I like my children. I like my husband. I like my house. I kind of
Mm.
like my job. And I love being a published author. So, I wouldn't want to kind of change, the things that made that happen.
Awesome. Well, that is it. No more questions from the chat. So that is it for this stream, you guys. Thank you so, so, so much for watching. Oh, wait, one more.
Okay.
What's next for you? Anything that you want your readers to be on the lookout for?
Follow me on Twitter because that's where I am most of the time. Instagram, I have posts as well because I have quite a few manuscripts sitting with my agent right now. So I'm hoping that within the next, first quarter, I'm hoping first quarter is a good one for me. So you'll
Awesome.
know about some things.
Okay. All right. All right. I need to make sure that I'm following you everywhere already because I as soon as I found your book, I was like, ah, oh, I need to see more of this book on my timeline. Why didn't nobody tell me about this book? I need to know. I need to know immediately. um, and
And if
then,
you're looking for other like romance, there's Blackout that's out. That's so
mhm.
short stories. And then Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry
Oh,
by
excuse me.
Joya Gaffney.
Oh, sorry. I get hype about Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry because I love that book so much. It's legit one of my favorites. And
Mhm.
so,
I haven't read it yet, but if I, like I'm just like because there's so few of the
mm-hmm.
romance. I think
Yep.
there's happily ever afters too, that are just like black boy, black girl getting together, having fun,
Absolutely.
falling in love.
And slight plug for the channel, if you do and if you did watch Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry and you enjoyed it, I did do an interview with Joya Goffney, so you can check that out on the channel as well. So that being said, you guys, we are exactly at an hour. I am going to wrap the stream here. Thank you so much for watching, for hanging out with us, for enjoying this conversation. If you have not picked it up yet, please pick up For All Time by Shanna Miles. It is an amazing book. You're going to love it. There's links down in the description box to do that. If you want to follow her on Instagram or Twitter, there's a link to do that. And also, her username is SR Miles Author on both those platforms, so you can just look it up. All right, it's real simple, like. And like the stream, subscribe to like the video, subscribe to the channel. I can't talk. And also, if you're interested in supporting Black authors, I do have a Patreon, and that basically just helps to make sure that I can keep doing these streams and bringing you guys good content. There are multiple versions of it, and there are perks. So you can check that out. Link down in the description. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for being here, and until next time, I hope your days are lovely and your books are interesting. Bye, you guys.